Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's now 7 p.m. We're live on.
You don't have to fill it out. Yeah, go ahead if you want, but I'll call you when, there's only 3 in front of you. Great.
Yes. Yeah. I was suggesting that to somebody the other day too. It's like somebody like a really crazy steep driveway.
It's a house in Saratoga that had that on the front lawn so the dog can go out during the winter.
Oh, look at that. They fixed the clock.
Oh, at the right time.
I was looking at it thinking, we're late. And it's like, we're not. All right, we ready? Are we ready to start out? Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. We're just going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance. The flag's behind you.
And in front of them.
Well, you can do the one in front of you, but we tend to do this one here. So, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. All right. Let me do a roll call. Councilmember Rhodes.
Here.
Councilmember Demansky. Here. Councilmember Grant.
Here.
The mayor is here. Councilmember Wake.
Here.
Councilmember Weatherby.
Here.
Councilmember Amar Blair. Here. All right. Is the city administrator here? I see you.
Partially.
It's kind of shiny over there. It's almost as shiny with the city attorney. No comments. Nice to have you both here.
Thank you.
I will be filing those notices of grievance tomorrow.
Oh my.
Countersign.
You're on my side.
So we have a couple community segments. These are fun. And so the first one I want to do is honoring the Welcome Center volunteers. So the county, Dutchess Tourism, helped us reopen that and restaff it and retrain it, and we just want to say thank you and honor them.
Thank you so
Why don't
much.
you go for it?
I'm Elaine Rockcamp. I'm the president of Dutchess Tourism, and I'm here with Jessica Sarantonio. She is our tourism operations manager, and she helps manage all our tourism information centers. And we are here to recognize some very, very important people tonight. Visitors to Dutchess County in 2023 spent more than $2 million a day in our county and contributed $93 million in state and local taxes. And without that money, our residents would have to pay per household $817 in additional taxes to maintain that same level of government service. So these volunteers are incredibly important to helping support our economy by referring people and giving them the information they need, the accurate information they need to go up and down your main street and to other parts of the county to spend their money here and have a great time and have such a good time they want to come back. So we're really excited to welcome them here tonight. We're so thrilled with the partnership that we have with you, Mayor, and the city administrator and others to have the Welcome Center up and running again. It's one of the priority places where so many visitors come into our county, and we're thrilled that the work that you've done and the partnership that we've had together to get it up and running, but none of it would be possible without the volunteers who actually do the work of meeting and greeting. So longtime volunteers, if you want to come up when I call your name, Carmen Johnson, who's been there for a very long time, and Noah Rossler, joined by our Dutchess.
Melaine, I've
Yes.
also got certificates for
yes.
them. So should I join you?
Yes, please do.
Okay, I'm coming up.
And Jessica, so the mayor has certificates of appreciation. Jessica has a token of our appreciation for you as well. In addition to Noah, we have Arden Jenkins, Hannah Brooks, Tashi Alexander Holmes, Ashanti Harris, and Kelly Ellenwood, along with other folks here. So we're really thrilled. Thank you so much for the work you do. Come on up. Come get your certificates and your gifts.
And Melaine, when the gift giving is over, can I get a photo of the group with you
We
and
definitely need a
Jessica?
photo, absolutely. It's not real if it's not on the gram, right?
Yes, that's what I hear.
Yay! Well, we are so appreciative because the Welcome Center is such a vital hub for the community and for visitors coming here. Thank you so much. Tasha? Thank you. Congress on here right now. Ashanti, thank you. Kelly, there she is.
And I've seen many of you in the Welcome Center. Not only do I want to say thank you, Matt, when I see you, thank you for all that. I think you're going to
And Jessica, of course. Where's the best place to stand? Is it that way? All right, gather now, folks. Love seeing you all here. This is so fun. Thank you again.
Thank you, but I actually have two more I want to give out, if you let me. Jessica, I've got one for you. And if you come up and get this, there is also a City of Beacon mug. Since you gave all our volunteers mugs, we wanted to do the same here. It's very cool. It says City of Beacon, has pictures. Yes, and then Melaine, you're getting the same. All right. So there's a certificate for your wall, suitable for framing, and then, look at this, right? Aren't they great? They're just, you should all want one. There might be one of you that might still be getting one soon, but they're great. All right, thank you. And I've got some extra ones for people who didn't show up. Yep.
Well, thank you, everyone, for helping us get this reactivated and for the leadership you brought to it. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Then the other public recognition we want to do is for one of our own. So Dan Amar Blair, you've been doing this for 5 years, 4 years, 11 months, and 17 days.
Yeah, I've resigned effective December 31st.
Okay, so you've got another 14 days to go. But I just remember when you were first running, you worked incredibly hard. I did a lot of walking with you, and it was just apparent that you were going to be out there for your ward. I just think you've been an outstanding ward rep. Somehow resources come into Ward 4 that I can't 100% explain sometimes, but Green Street Park has turned out to be great. We might be working on another park in there. And I just want to say thank you for all you do. We're looking forward for all the good stuff you're going to do in your next position. I don't know if other council members want to say something, but this is your mug.
Thanks, sir.
Dan, before you speak, I will take you up on other council members. I just want to thank you for being both a good neighbor and a valued colleague over the past, I don't quite remember how long we've overlapped, but it's been very nice working with you this past year, and you will be missed.
I'll jump in to say two things. One thing, when I first joined council, there were also two other new people at the same time, one of whom is also still on council, and I felt just your generosity of time and kind of bringing us in and helping us understand that. I also remember a time when you and I disagreed on something on council and we voted differently on it, and the first thing you did, I think that night or the next day, you reached out to me to basically make sure the relationship was good and wanting to talk about it. I think that really will serve you well at the county level in any position that you take, the fact that that relationship, the foundation of which is so important to you, and it shows up in how you show up in the work.
Thanks.
And I don't want to be left out. I just want to say thank you, one, for when I was considering joining. You were really great. I mean, you were very generous with your time and good constructive conversations. And I want to thank you for not dressing like me the last several meetings so that people don't confuse us. So I'm the one without the facial hair. Thank you. Or the glasses.
All right. I don't have anything terribly funny to say, but I'll say that I have, I think, Dan, you were one of the first people that I met when I moved to Beacon, and to realize that your city council person or somebody who was going to be your city council person could be your neighbor or your friend was really impactful for me in appreciating and understanding the role, and you have been a role model for me in many ways, being on council, and I have deeply appreciated the way that you have worked with your constituents. I worked with you as a council member, as a constituent before I got to be at this table myself, and so I've really appreciated all of the ways you've shown up for this community and the ways that you will continue to in your new role.
And I just wanted to say congratulations, and I'm so proud of you because you worked so hard for this, and the county is so lucky to have you as their comptroller starting January 1st. It's not that often that you have somebody who actually is, has experience doing what you're going to do for the comptroller. I'm so proud of you, and I've known you for several years, and this year you really have impressed me. I mean, you've impressed me before, but I am just in awe of what you've done this year. Thank you.
Dan?
One more conversation about sidewalks.
As some of you have commented, Dan and I have had some very spirited conversations at this table. I think Justice and Molly called this the hot side of the table. And that's what people see at the meetings. What you haven't seen is Dan and I have actually developed one of the strongest working relationships I've had with somebody that I've worked with. And in fact, I would say it is now a friendship. Dan, you've been a great advocate. You're this right mix of retail politics with big ideas. You have advocated effectively for your ward, and the mayor has noted that there have been vast improvements in certain areas of the 4th Ward. And I would just say you are indefatigable and you are fearless. And I think that's perfect for the next comptroller. And I really look forward to seeing the next chapter. And I really have appreciated working with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Feelings mutual.
So I just want to offer one more thing. The mug, do not try to hang it on your wall. Just use that for coffee. But this, which is City of Beacon in honor and recognition of Dan A.R. Blair, Councilmember Ward 4, City of Beacon 2020 to 2024. I just want to give you this.
Did you get Pam's head in?
I know. Is there too much of a glow?
You want a milk cleared out? Chris, was that okay? Do you want a photo a different one?
Do you want one?
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, come on. Yeah.
Why don't we do one with the council and your family?
Yeah, come on.
Thank you. What should we say, Dan? Some German thing. Yes, there you go. Come on, Henry, look up. All right. Thank you. All right.
Should I say something now, or should I say something in my comment?
I
Okay.
think it's up to you. You want? I think you can do whatever you feel.
No, I'll quickly say, you want to
speak?
Yeah, just very quickly. When I first won, when I first got elected to office in 2019, I was really excited to get started on city council, and I had some misconceptions, as we all do, before we get into office. But the last 5 years have been deeply rewarding 5 years. I just said goodbye to my day job after 15 years. On Friday was my last day at the Department of Education, but my feelings are much stronger about this because I feel like, well, you guys know me. I'm thinking about all of the things that I didn't get done in the last 5 years. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody, and especially the voters of Ward 4, my neighbors, and I look forward to working with you all and supporting my neighbors in the future. Thanks. And my wife and children.
Is there an adjective that goes in front of that, like long-suffering or ever patient, or? Yeah, the only thing I would add is 5 years is not that long. You don't have to do everything in that period of time. It takes a while. You will discover that it probably takes a longer while at the county to get stuff done, but you're going to be there for a while. So I think that's great. Okay.
And you have friends who are still on council who will keep working on your projects.
Yeah. Let's do public comments next. And there is a single public hearing. It's kind of a sleepy one. It's on a local law concerning parking, standing, and stopping. And if you don't know what that means, you probably don't want to make a comment in that hearing. It's just about traffic stuff. If you want to make a comment on that, hang out. But you can make a comment on any topic of your choice for up to 3 minutes, and I go in order of people who signed up, and then if you haven't signed up, I'll call you next. Peter Skorowitz. Peter Skorowitz, are you allowed to speak?
Is the public hearing?
Oh, it's for the public hearing. Sorry, you're absolutely right. Yeah, because it actually concerns the street, yeah, that he lives on. All right, so Karen Sign. Hi, come on up.
Good evening, council members. Is this working? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll bring it a little closer, though.
Okay. My name is Karen Sign, and I live at 15 Crescent Drive in Beacon. I am here to request that the City of Beacon formally join Cold Spring in asking for a 120-day extension to the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail DGEIS public hearing period. This extension is crucial to ensure that residents, officials, and stakeholders have ample time to thoroughly review the extensive documents and understand the potential impacts on our community. Cold Spring has already made this request, and it is important that Beacon does the same to ensure we have a fair and transparent review process. I respectfully ask the Council to support this request for an extension from state parks. Thank you for your time and consideration. And have very happy holidays. And congratulations.
Thank you. Mary Ann Loesch.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Loesch. I live in Beacon in Ward 2, and I'm just here to support what Karen Sign presented to you, to the council. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Teresa Kraft.
Good evening. Thank you, Dan. A few years ago, the city conducted a study that identified the Mace Firehouse as a potential community space. It's concerning how quickly we forgot this. A Beacon museum and a community-focused use of the remainder of the building would benefit the entire community. We are not asking for a handout or for the city to give away the building. Instead, I'm urging the city to pause any real estate marketing and consider the options that will truly benefit the residents. The city recently achieved a remarkable feat with the redevelopment of the new firehouse, and I believe it can undertake a similar grassroots effort to keep the majestic Mace building accessible to its residents. Our current comprehensive plan includes plans for improving the streetscape between Main Street and the train station along Beekman Street and West Main Street. However, what we are witnessing at the planning board level is a push for high-density development that leaves no room for fresh air or open space up the hill to Main Street. This leads to a mass build-out on almost every corner on Main Street. I am convinced that any real estate deal involving the sale of the city-owned firehouse would be a classic bait and switch, similar to the one included in tonight's agenda. Tonight, you will decide on Beacon 248 Holdings LLC request for a waiver of zoning code 22341 14B, which requires simultaneous construction of non-residential space with residential development. This request would authorize the building inspector to issue the certificate of occupancy for the residential buildings. However, I believe no relief should be granted. Instead, a penalty fee should be imposed on the company for intentionally violating the laws. This should be the cost of their actions. It's time to revisit and revise the city comprehensive plan and implement a new moratorium on building construction. Page 19 of the plan lists the protection of residential areas from incompatible development. That's a joke. Page 20 addresses the protection of view sheds, particularly the views of the Hudson River, Mount Beacon, and the Fishkill Creek Greenway corridors along the Hudson River, as well as the trails between the city and Mount Beacon. And please, please do not help rush the Fjords Trail through. Please, as a municipality, demand an extension. Thank you. We've been following that for years.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to make a public comment? Come on up, tell us who you are, approximately where you live.
Hello, my name is Erin Stein-Whitson. I live at 233 Route 9D in Beacon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I, too, am here to request that the City of Beacon formally petition New York State Parks for an extension of the public hearing on the DGIS for the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail. The current timeline does not allow our community officials enough time to fully understand and address several critical issues. Some key concerns that on the early review of this DGIS that a number of us are doing that have jumped out so far that we are concerned about is, one, an incomplete traffic analysis. The GIS evaluates traffic impacts only at the entry points at this time between Beacon and Cold Spring, but ignores the stretch of Route 9D in between these towns where multiple new parking lots are proposed. This narrow, winding road is already strained, and without a full traffic study, we risk dangerous congestion, illegal parking, and safety hazards that could overwhelm residents, visitors, and emergency services. Two, underestimating visitor impact. History shows that visitation numbers are often dramatically underestimated. One example is the High Line in New York City that projected 300,000 visitors but saw 1.3 million in the first year, which is 333% increase. I bring that up because the executive vice president of the High Line is now the CEO of HHFT. The second example is the walkway over the Hudson. The initial projections for that was 268,000 visitors, and they saw over 500,000 visitations in the first year. Applying these trends to HHFT means that we could see between 900,000 and 1.4 million visitors annually, not the 670,000 that's projected right now. Our current infrastructure cannot support this level of traffic and parking demand without significant planning and mitigation. Three, incomplete environmental review. The DGIS lacks a thorough review of critical environmental risks, particularly regarding what's most recently become quite a concern for us is wildfire hazards and also PCB contamination. Wildfire risks with the drought conditions have become more frequent and severe in the Hudson Valley. Increased foot traffic through the dry forested area raises the risk of accidental fires from discarded cigarettes, from campfires, or other careless behavior. Proposed parking lots along 9D will bring more vehicles into proximity with dry, fire-prone vegetation, increasing the potential for ignition from overheated engines and exhaust systems. The DGIS does not include a detailed plan for fire prevention, mitigation, and most importantly, emergency response to address these heightened risks. PCB contamination. The DGIS does mention
15 seconds.
containing PCB containing materials, but fails to provide a detailed project-specific evaluation of how construction in or near the riverbed might disturb the contaminated sediments. We just ask that the City of Beacon formally request the extension of the...
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you, Erin. Anyone else in the public audience, physical audience? Ben, anyone in the virtual audience want to make a public comment, other than the
If
public
you're-
hearing?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a comment this evening, please use the raised hand option at the bottom of your screen. If you're joining by phone, you will need to press *9. And if you're watching on YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom link instead by visiting beaconny.gov and going to our calendar where there's a link. As of now, Mayor, there is no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. For those of you who didn't get a chance to speak here, there will be a second opportunity for public comments at the end of the meeting if you have not spoken yet. We've got a public hearing. Let's open a public hearing. I'm looking for a motion and a second to open the public hearing on a proposed local law concerning parking, standing, and stopping, which Ben will tell us what the heck that means.
Motion?
Second?
That was Dan and Paloma. And Ben, what are we talking about? I know there's two of them, right?
Yes, I'm happy to refresh all of your memories on this matter and the public's as well. I'm pulling up a memo that was put together that helps with a visual of what is being proposed here. So the proposed local law is looking at two different changes to the code as it stands now. The first is on Roundtree Court. It proposes 3 areas of no parking zones. They're highlighted here in yellow. There would be new no parking zones. These were brought to our attention by members of the HOA of Roundtree Court in order to facilitate emergency vehicle access. They were measured out by our highway department to get as precise as we're able to get, and the law reflects those measurements in the areas that were concerned to the HOA and as well as the Traffic Safety Committee. The second proposed change is to add a new loading zone on North Cedar. And this was brought to our attention by a number of different residents, and it mirrors the hours and limitations that are in place on other loading zones on Main Street as well.
Any comments? Oh, yes. We have 2 people signed up. The first one is some gentleman whose name I can't pronounce, named Peter Skorowitz. I guess I can't pronounce it.
The audio works okay.
I know.
Who's running the meeting?
It's on wide, so just got the back of my head. Good evening, council. Peter Skorowitz, 23 Roundtree Court, president of Metro Homeowners HOA. The mayor, funny, referred to this as Pete's amendment last week in the workshop, and it does have personal for me because I've been working on this, I'm going to guess before 2018. We've had issues. We were able to get the first curve, a no parking, to open up that area back in 2017, which worked out well. We also worked with Mickey for our pool area, but because it was seasonal, we didn't have to come to Traffic and Safety and the council. The association put bollards up in front of the pool, and then we put cones out. So God forbid we need an emergency vehicle during pool season, there's no parking there because we set it up that way. The rest of the area has been a thorn, and the reason why it got personal for me is in 2018, some of you might remember we had a fire at 57 Roundtree Court. Our guys were there within minutes. Our 3 engines pulled up to the front of 57. The assistant chief immediately called for a second alarm. Fishkill Fast and Chelsea could not get in. They got to my house in 23, and the engines just kind of lined up, and guys were running off the trucks because we had people on both sides of the street. Thankfully, they didn't need to have an engine behind the units, so everything went okay. Our guys got the fire out. But as was stated last week in the workshop, these are just residents. They won't use the parking lot. We've exhausted through the HOA letters, personal letters, phone calls. We have our upper parking lot, unless it's a snowy night, has 2 cars in it. It's a 24-space parking lot. The lower parking lot mostly gets used, but people just, it's trying to get the homeowners to use what we have on the premises and open up that road. You know, during Friday garbage day, it's a nightmare. Then you have people trying to get in and out. So I really appreciate the Traffic and Safety going through this. We had the initial meeting a year ago. We worked with Mickey, and I think this is going to help us out with, opening up Roundtree Court to be a little bit safer. The speeding is another issue. We went through a couple different things when Mayor Steve was sitting here. He actually sat in one of our parking lots and tracked himself who speeds in Roundtree Court, and it was the same 3 or 4 neighbors. Wrote them letters and got very nasty responses from a couple of them as they told him, speed limit in Beacon's 30, we can do whatever we want. And most of you know
15 seconds.
You can't do 30. So we're hoping that this is a good start for us, and I really appreciate the effort in the last year. So thank you.
Thank you, Pete. There's a traffic safety committee opening, if you have any interest. I will note that Roundtree Court, the Homeowners Association actually does really good stuff, and I think part of that's due to Pete, but I also think they're very responsible homeowners. Teresa Kraft, if you want to speak on this one.
Sorry. I'm in favor of approving this, and the second one that's listed, I'd like to see more of those throughout the city, as suggested by the Main Street Access. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the physical public want to speak on this topic? Observing none, does anyone online want to speak on this topic before we close the hearing, Ben?
No hands raised on Zoom.
I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
So that's Molly and Pam. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Council reports. Do we want to start with Dan or end with Dan? What do you all think?
And
All right, so we're going to start with Molly and end with Dan.
Okay. Happy holidays to everyone. I know this is the time of year where we think about people who have passed and also think about ways that we can give back. And I just want to note that yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of David Shelley passing away. So for those who were around Beacon at the time, he was the person who was the pink unicorn in Beacon, particularly on farmers market days. He would walk around. And I wanted to bring him up today, not only because of the anniversary, but also his wife, Jill, is working with other local people on forming a fund in his honor that would actually provide direct financial support to the people of Beacon. It is still a work in progress, something that she's working very hard to see how she can bring to fruition, so there are no direct details to share yet, but I just want to note that in the holiday season, it's great to see, along with all the other great nonprofits that already exist and have been working for a long time in Beacon, how we continue to look for ways to support our residents. And with that, I'll pass it to Jeff.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks to the paving crews. There's a report in the paper that construction season is largely done on these roadways with all the paving. Just looking for Chris to acknowledge and just any reports on that. So Teller and Route 52, that's going to wait till the new year, right, for any changes that are going to happen there. Just putting it out for the public knowledge. I'm very much in the interest of over-communicating on a couple of different issues, and I'll be very brief to leave room for that, I hope. I'd like to acknowledge that there's been a lot of discussion about what's happening with the RFP for the sale of the Mace Firehouse. I've heard some ideas that I'm really keen to explore further, and I don't want to rush a decision for an opportunity that might be a win-win-win for the city. So I'd welcome an updated report, like I said, over-communicating from the mayor on the thoughts, the processes, the timelines, the costs associated with this. But I think there's a value in what we can share as much as we can for the public to understand the decisions that are going to be made, and exploring the options that are out there. And similarly, I know we have to replace Dan, sadly, but the process of doing so, I'd love to hear as much public communications about that process as we can have. Thank you.
All right. As we wrap up the year, I wish everyone a happy and restorative holiday season. I hope everybody has some time to rest and regroup with their loved ones. And in the spirit of looking forward to the new year, I'm certainly eager to progress some of the council's policy priorities. And as a recap of some of the priorities that I've shared, I offer a reminder that on October 28th, the council invoked our privilege in the charter to add 2 items to an upcoming agenda. Those items were to discuss a mobility or access plan to encourage non-personal vehicle use, as well as continue complete streets assessments, and to follow up on the 2022 discussion on inclusionary zoning. I think as we all recall, the mobility access plan was part of recent budget discussions, and those discussions also created funding for a communication plan. So I will add that developing the council's thought on that as well, and that we may be served well by leveraging a freelance or consulting help to assist with the communication plan. And lastly, I look forward to quickly addressing Fishkill Avenue zoning in order to mitigate our risk of having long-term investments made that do not meet the council's objectives. I hope to see these items come to discussion in the new year. Fishkill Avenue is probably the most pressing, but I look forward to the work ahead of us on the council and hope that we're able to make quick work of some of these things. We certainly have plenty to do. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll keep mine short. I will second Amber's desire to continue the conversation on those 4 key policy priorities, and also agree with Jeff's desire for communicating as much as is possible and feasible about these 2 major projects. And then I'll just say thanks to the Highway Department for the first plow of the season this morning. They did a great job, at least on Liberty. And also Main Street, which I walk every Monday. And I will be resuming my open office hours on 3rd Sundays of the month. So that is Sunday, January 19th, from 4 to 6 p.m. And I'll be at the Trax Coffee on 2 East Main. Thanks.
And I'll just tell everyone happy holidays and all the best in the new year to everyone. I wanted to say thank you to all the Welcome Center volunteers. It really is a big help, and so happy that that is back up and running. I did attend via Zoom the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee meeting, which the last one, it was a really good meeting. And they also were in the first half hour of the planning board meeting, which was helpful to hear, the planning board and the chair of the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee have some discussion. And just in general, the first half hour of the planning board meetings, they do have kind of like a learning session, which I've learned a lot from that. And I do try to catch up on that if I can't attend in person, trying to listen later, which is wonderful that we have that available. And with the snowfall, just reminding everybody, sidewalks need to be cleared. I did notice there was one stretch not done on my way over tonight, so it does make it hard for people who are trying to walk on the sidewalks to get through those with the slush. And I also would look forward to hearing more on the complete streets and the mobility for our city. And that's it. Thank you.
Dan?
All right. So the last thing I'll weigh on policy-wise is the Fishkill Avenue Committee. I think that the Fishkill Avenue Committee has shared their work. They're not done. And I don't think it's appropriate for us to still hear applications from properties on Fishkill Avenue. I would think that we should have a moratorium that's covering the area where the Fishkill Avenue Committee is reviewing. And then secondly, I will be hosting a meeting this coming Saturday from 10 to 12 o'clock. We're going to be discussing what is next in Ward 4, and I'm just going to go over some of the projects that we've worked on over the last few years, and just give a status update to Ward 4 residents about, or anybody that wants to come, about where we are on some of those projects. So it's going to be Saturday morning from 10 to 12 at the Recreation Center, and hope to see you there. Thank you.
Okay, 'tis the season for lots of meetings and events. Attended the DAR Daughters of the American Revolution event at Madam Brett, the Bannerman's holiday party at the St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, the Historical Society event yesterday, an art exhibit as well, the superintendent's holiday event at West Point, and the Planning Board and Fishkill Avenue meeting together, which I thought was actually very effective. Just a couple of other points. I just want to point out, and actually Jeff Sims verified this, which is every single development that we do in the past several years is absolutely consistent with our comprehensive plan. Whether everyone agrees with that or not, that's what's in our comprehensive plan, because fundamentally it was designed to keep, to hopefully rejuvenate Main Street, which we did in spades, and also to finally start to build on all the urban renewal land that remained fallow for 40-plus years, which we've also succeeded in doing. So I just want to point that out. I also want to point out that the firehouse, the last $1.5 million that we agreed to put into it presupposed that our funding was available by selling the two buildings. About $500,000 of that was for geothermal, and then the last $1 million was for the brick facade. I think everyone agrees that those have been worthy investments. They were made possible by bringing the cost of the firehouse down by moving it to this location. Those who recall, the last study was telling us before I got into office that we needed to buy the old City Hall, tear it down, tear down the back half of the Memorial Building and build a combination firehouse extension from Mays and parking lot back there. That was absolutely prohibitive, despite estimates to the contrary. And by coming here, we reduced the cost enough and used the existing parking that had been already purchased to do a much more modest and thorough and modern update. That allowed us, that plus the sales tax revenue, allowed us to do those additions. I will point out that we did a quick look at the cost of renovating Mays and decided that it was prohibitive for a municipal government to do so because of all of the additional requirements imposed upon a government for that renovation. While not going into the details, I will just say that it is much less expensive for private sector renovation. The one example we have of a private sector renovation is our original Tompkins Hose Firehouse, which, as you know, is at the corner of Main and Cross Street. It is a spectacular renovation. Before it was sold to the private sector, it was used by a nonprofit group, and it was basically a dump until a funder came along who could afford to do all the work, and this is what we have to show for it. Our buildings are subject to historic renovation requirements, and at least one of them is on the National Register, if not a second one, and we expect that work will be done consistent with the plan. So I just wanted to point that out. Happy to go into discussion of details, but I just want to remind the council that's what we agreed to do. We agreed on the $14.7 million. I'm perfectly fine to revisit it, but I just want to point that out. And then finally on Ward 4, last call. That's the second part of the process. I announced at the first meeting I was accepting applications. I've received several. I've offered to interview anyone who has submitted an application and is qualified to serve on the council in Ward 4. I expect to have possibly another one or two, and then we'll go from there. Okay? That's the process. Anything else, City Administrator?
Yeah, since it's the end of the year, I just wanted to thank city staff and department heads for what I think has been an amazingly successful year. I think everyone's seen the amount of work that we got done this year. It was a historic capital project year for us with the firehouse, the water meter upgrade, the We Play rehabilitation, Teller Fishkill Avenue, completing our primary settling tanks at the wastewater treatment plant, and undertaking the West Main pump station and force main. That equates to about $30 million in projects. And that has put stress on every part of our organization, from highway and water, fire, and finance, frankly, because they had to process a lot of contracts and invoices. And I just want to thank the staff for their flexibility, for their hard work this year, We had some bumps in the road with some smaller projects, but thankfully the larger ones went really well. And I would just say we're queuing up the next round of projects for next year, which is a lot of sewer and water projects. It's about $15 million in new projects. And then we will be substantially through the backlog that we had when I came on. And again, thanks to the city staff. Every department had achievements this year. The police solved major cases, fire was able to deal with their temporary quarters, and I just really appreciate the staff that we work with. So, and we are done with paving for the year. And thank you to Highway and Water for finishing that last week before the snow started flying. All right.
Just based on your comments and Dan's comments, I do need to look now to see if the sidewalks on the Ward 4 side of Teller are better than the ones on the Ward 2 side.
You do.
I do notice that there were some unfinished sidewalks on our side.
Jeff,
So
I
I'm
would
gonna
just
take a
note
look.
that if they aren't now, they will be.
Very nice.
Yeah, I also just want to echo what Chris said about thanking all the employees for all the hard work, and in particular, the city administrator. You actually bit off far more than you can chew, and you chewed it pretty well, most times. The only other thing I would add is I've been waiting for a very long time to advance the city's payments capabilities. As you know, that's the area of the banking industry I've worked in for most of my career. The one thing that we did do very quickly during COVID is we got the ability to accept online payments, which was a nice add. I've been waiting patiently to get to e-billing and auto pays and other things. Finance is very busy, and I'm very patient. We will eventually get there. It's not critical path, and so I'm recognizing it's a lower priority, but we will. And I just want to thank the amount of work that finance has done. They've been particularly pressed this year, as has Highway, of course. Okay. I guess we have laws and resolutions. We got 5 on the docket. Let's do them. The first one is an appointment of Nicholas Durzo to the position of senior auto mechanic. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second?
So I think that was Amber and Paloma? Okay.
It was me.
Okay. Chris, you want to tell us anything?
Yeah, we are going to have a retirement of Steve Bechtel on January 4th from his head automotive mechanic position. As you know, we promoted Pete Delfico to take that, and Pete's position as senior automotive mechanic, we would like to backfill with Nick Durso. Nick has been with us for 7 years, 4 years as a mechanic. He's done a great job, and we would make this appointment effective after Steve retires. So on January 6th, everybody moves.
All right, we had this discussion in workshop. Any comments here? All right, all in favor of appointing Nicholas Durzo to the position of senior automotive mechanic, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. The second one is a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute a memorandum of agreement. That's with the PBA, the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, regarding an increase in pay. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion?
It's not an increase in pay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's an-
Yes, it's a,
Incentive.
yeah.
It's an incentive
It's an incentive
for-
payment. Yeah, so,
Second.
sorry.
Then second. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was confused.
Second
Thank
for
you.
the
Sorry.
transfer and referral initiative.
So
That's how it's-
Molly and Amber, motion and second. Chris, would you explain
Yes.
why I got it wrong?
And I'm sorry for being redundant on this, but if somebody's tuning in, I think it's important to understand what we're doing. Our police has faced a serious staffing shortage this year. We're now down 8 officers out of a contingent of 36 officers, with 2 out on injury and another in the academy. We are regularly using overtime to fill basic shifts, and we are unable to do many of the other things that we would like to do, like assigning a dedicated officer to Main Street or the bike patrol. One of the only ways that we can bring this down in a reasonable time frame is to get New York State officers to transfer from other jurisdictions. And I mentioned last week that there was a change in civil service law that now allows us to hire transfers from New York Police Department. We are trying to facilitate that by doing a recruitment bonus of $5,000. It's a one-time payment that a transfer who doesn't need to go to the academy and can, basically come in and do field training and then go to shift would get. And there's also a referral bonus of $5,000. And our hope is that as people come from NYPD, they will refer their friends here, and that may help us to make up the shortage. We do have someone in the pipeline right now. It would not apply to them. They applied 2 months ago. I'm hoping to bring them to you on January 6th. But we are facing additional possible retirements next year and certainly the following year. So I don't think this is going to change, and we're just trying to use every tool in our toolbox to possibly increase our ranks. So this would be a one-year pilot starting January 1, sunsetting on December 31st, and then we'll see how it went and assess whether we should continue it.
And then, Chris, I'm sorry if I just overlooked you saying this, but I didn't see it in the resolution. And the time frame for the referral was that both people had to be here 6 months, right?
Yes, so
Okay.
once they come in, they have to be with the department for 6 months before they get the bonus, and they have to be in good standing.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And if I understand correctly, all hires are hired in a probationary period for a full year.
Yes.
I got a question from a constituent about that, and if somebody leaves sort of after their probationary first year or before the end of their probation was really the question, they would still receive that bonus. However, our memorandum only lasts a year, so there's no instance where we wouldn't be reviewing this law before somebody could leave before a year of employment. Explain that funny. Should I say that a different way?
So this will affect anyone hired during that year. So even, it would still, the conditions and the incentive would still be available. Let's say if you were hired next December, you would have to be here 6 months and be in good standing to receive the bonus.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I guess the constituent was concerned that we would hire somebody January 6th, they would leave January 1st.
Of the following year.
Of the following year.
That could possibly happen.
But that we, as a council, would have revisited this law in that time. And I guess we wouldn't know that somebody was going to leave after a year, 2 weeks after we revisited the law. But that we will be looking at this in another year before.
I think you'll have a good sense of how this is working by the end of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter next year. We'll see if this works. I mean, the hope is that we get one or more people from NYPD and they start referring colleagues that they had in their divisions or departments, I'm not sure what they call them, and they start coming. People can leave anytime they want. I mean, I have another person leaving in March that I didn't expect to have to backfill because the state police hired or looking to hire one of our officers. So I never know where they're going to be. Again, I'm not sure, we're not clear that this is going to be the answer, but we want to try something. I mean, we've tried a number of things. We've raised pay twice for the police outside of their normal contract. We'll be negotiating a contract next year, which I think is going to be important, again, to solidify that this is a good place to come to work. We also have done buyback of vacation days, and it's not a perfect answer, but I don't know what other tools we have right now. I said to the mayor, I've asked the police, are there other tools? Is there a way to keep people, give them an incentive, for instance, to stay beyond the 20 years that they typically retire? Because you have somebody that's well-trained, experienced, that knows the community. Can I keep them here for a couple more years by adding something else in? So again, I don't know how it will work, Paloma. I'm hopeful we get a few. Even if we got 2 or 3, we would be well ahead of where we are right now.
Right.
So, and I'll give you a report. I mean, as we hire, I'll give you updates on where we are.
That gets at the other question the constituent shared, which is whether we would be able to get more regular reports on overtime use. I think we did have that for a short period, and I don't know what regularity would feel feasible for you and the chief. But just to understand how the overtime is being used beyond the budget amendments that we approve.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that, and again, I'll talk to the chief about how we get monthly updates on it. Right now, we're tracking towards we're going to be within the budget that we amended. We gave you a very realistic number for next year, so if we're tracking towards it, I generally don't say anything. If we're not tracking towards it, I certainly will give you updates. We are actively managing it. The chief and I have a conversation every week about the upcoming kind of elective overtime for events and other things. We've tried to be really judicious about when we use it.
Yeah, I guess I know that you're tracking it very clearly, but I think there's an interest from the public to have some of that a little more clear to whatever extent feels appropriate.
Well, maybe as we do hires, that might be an occasion just to bring it up.
Sure.
Yeah, I can do that.
I have a question regarding this. So let's say someone hires in September, and we review the program at the end of the year. Would that person in March be able to get that bonus, or do we have to renew the program?
No, I believe they would receive the bonus because the commitment is made upon their hire.
All right, that's what I wanted
and
to
upon their
confirm.
referral. So
Right.
again, if they come in a year from February, you've looked at the policy, they thought they were going to get it, but you changed the policy, they wouldn't get it. But during this year, if we do attract a transfer, whoever, the person who came, and if there is a person who referred, they would be entitled to that.
Okay, and that's how it's written, Nick? Great, that's, I just wanted to confirm
Yeah.
that. That's all I got. Anything else? No. All right, so all in favor of authorizing the administrator to execute the MOA with the PBA, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. So the next one's a motion, and a second, I'm looking forward to authorize the city administrator to execute agreement with Brown & Brown for the NYMAR Insurance Cooperative.
Motion.
Second.
So that's Molly and Paloma. You're going to tell us what NYMAR stands for and how many municipalities are in the co-op.
Yes.
And go for it. Thank you,
Thanks.
Chris.
We talked about this last week, but I'll give a quick update. You'll see in the packet, the proposal is by Brown & Brown, which is the insurance broker. The insurance carrier is the New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocal, which is it's owned by the municipalities that insure through it. It's a not-for-profit insurance reciprocal composed of about 950 municipalities. Our cost for renewing in 2025 is proposed to go up 7.2%. We did factor in an expected 10% increase in the budget, so we're actually below budget. One update from last week is we didn't have a number for our cyber liability, and they held their number firm from last year. So this would increase the cost from $559,707 to $600,117, 7.2%. We insure all of our property, all of our vehicles, and we have a very strong liability policy that covers all of the things that we get claims against. And whenever we have claims against the city, NYMAR also defends us, which has been very helpful, but it also has a cost. So we would be renewing for 2025, and some of you had asked why the price went up, and again, that's a factor really of three things: your claim history, and we have had some claims, the cost of the assets in your portfolio, and then also the adding new buildings, and we did add the new firehouse, and we still have not taken the 2 old firehouses off the policy. So all of those contributed, and insurance in general has been going up because the replacement value of all assets has gotten higher as the price of materials and labor has gone up.
Chris, just a clarification on the cyber liability. I thought I recalled that an assessment needed to be completed. Was the assessment completed, or did they just give us a price of?
No, it was an application, and
Okay.
our IT consultant, which is Eben Ackerley from, I forget the name, Enable Your Biz is
Okay.
his company, and he was working through it with it. And I actually think the reason that we got the same number as last year is Eben has really set us up well in defending our network, backing up our data, and protecting us from cyber threats like you've seen recently hit the city of Newburgh.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify if that was a quote or if we had completed the
No.
process. So we've completed the process.
We're good to go at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
And your description of that increase for the commercial auto, you said the assets had gone up, the price of insurance, but it's, it's more than a 10% increase on the auto insurance line. Just wanted to make sure you're comfortable with it. You looked at that and you feel like that makes sense to you?
I do, because I'm seeing what we're paying for new cars, and I'm seeing what we're paying for repairs to cars. The price of parts alone have been substantial the last couple years. We've also added some vehicles and equipment to that. We've been, and we're about to add more. We are getting grants for 5 or 6 new electric vehicles in 2025 that our Climate Smart coordinator has worked to help obtain. And so I think that number is going to keep going up, but that's not a bad story because we're doing more. We have, and we're changing out vehicles with higher value vehicles.
Okay, any other questions, comments on this one? All right, so all in favor of authorizing the administrator to execute an agreement with Brown & Brown for the NYMER Insurance Services, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. All right, I'm looking for a motion, a second, to adopt a local law concerning parking, standing, and stopping.
Motion.
So Pam and
Second.
Jeff, and this concerns Roundtree Court and North
Cedar.
Okay. Ben, you want to give us the quick version? You already did, right? Because we did the hearing. Would you add anything else that you didn't give us to introduce the topic at the hearing?
Nope, I have nothing further to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good, Ben.
Folks?
You were scared.
No, Ben's reliable.
All right. So all in favor of adopting local law 13 regarding Roundtree Court and North Cedar Street, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
I'll just reiterate what the public comment stated, that I'm also interested in seeing more loading zones off of Main Street if this model works.
Okay. Yeah, this is one of the areas that were part of the quick hits of the Main Street Access Committee, and the implementation of it kind of has to fit into how the Highway Department does all their work. So they may be able to do another one, just like some of the parking comes online gradually, right? So we'll get there. Okay, the last one is I'm looking for a motion and a second to grant a request of 248 Beacon Holdings on waiving requirements for the zoning code. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
So that's Molly and Amber. And then, Nick, you want to give us the summary of this?
I will. It's a 5-page resolution, so it's going to be a bit of a longer summary than usual, but I'll
that's
hit the
okay.
highlights. So this is a resolution that would be granting for good cause shown Beacon 248 Holdings request to waive a requirement of zoning code section 22341.14B, that non-residential space be built concurrently with a residential development, and authorizing the building inspector to issue a certificate of occupancy for the 2 residential buildings. And the 5-page resolution, the initial whereas clause, goes through the history of the site, how in 2014 there was an application submitted for a 100-unit multifamily residential development, received concept plan approval, received site plan approval. There were then some changes to the Fishkill Creek zoning district that reduced the density permitted on that lot, and that new zoning change applied to this property as they had not undertaken substantial construction of the project. They came back and received planning board approval in April 2020 for a reduced unit count of 64 residential units located in 2 buildings, designated as building 200 and 300, of which 6 units would be workforce housing. And also, they addressed the zoning code requirement, which had been amended to require that there be a non-residential component, which is an approximately 25,400 square foot building designated as building 100. Prior to commencing construction, they were advised by the city's building inspector in 2021 that its request to defer building the non-residential building concurrently with the residential building was denied. They appeared before the ZBA seeking a relief from that provision. They then withdrew that application when they asserted that the requirement, the necessity for it was because they're having difficulty with their lenders getting financing for both a residential project and a non-residential component. They subsequently obtained the financing and withdrew their request for a variance from the ZBA. They then came back to the planning board in November of 21 and received amended site plan approval to eliminate the emergency access ramp on Walcott Avenue and modified the height of building 100. They applied for a building permit and received construction. And then in May of this year, they received second amended site plan approval regarding the location of the Greenway Trail, adding some EV charging stations and some other modifications. They also then started discussions and applied for a building permit for the construction of a non-residential building in November of 2023, modified that permit in April of 2014, and constructed the foundation of the non-residential building in July of 2024. And then in September 9th of this year, the city adopted a local law that allowed, for good cause shown, the city to impose conditions as it deems appropriate, but allow a CO to be issued for dwelling units prior to the non-residential component being completed. In October 11th, you received an application by Beacon 248 for the provision to allow COs to be issued for the residential buildings. You heard from the applicant at your workshops on October 15th, November 12th, and November 24th. You also heard comments from the public during the public comment sessions. And what we've added in this clause, in this resolution, is some whereas clauses to put the resolution in context. Whereas the City Council recognizes that while market conditions have changed since the zoning requirement for the Fish Creek District was amended in 2017 to add the requirement of a non-residential building, the applicant has admittedly conceded that its marketing efforts could be more robust, and to its credit, the applicant has undertaken additional marketing efforts since it submitted to its application to the council, as explained in detail by its commercial real estate broker at your November 12th meeting. Whereas the City Council recognizes that the residential units in buildings 200 and 300 are ready to be occupied, and the fact that the non-residential building has not been constructed is solely due to the decisions and actions of the applicant and its failure to seek such relief earlier or to comply with the zoning code and conditions of site plan approval to construct the non-residential building concurrently with the residential building. And then whereas the council recognizes the applicant has placed council members in the middle of a dilemma where the council seeks adherence to its zoning code and conditions of the planning board's approval, but recognizes the change in market conditions for non-residential construction and the need for the housing within the city in the lower Hudson Valley, and that there will be 6 BMR units available. And that notwithstanding that the applicant does not come to the council with clean hands, the council recognizes the greater interest of city residents in the addition of housing units and benefits to the city tax roll by having this property placed in service and available for occupancy before the non-residential component is constructed. And whereas the City Council forewarns any other applicants of the Fishkill Creek Development District that the granting of this resolution is unique and not to be deemed as a precedent and not to be relied on in the future. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Beacon hereby finds that the following good cause exists to grant the applicant's request. 1, the placement of housing units on the market sooner than would otherwise occur. 2, the receipt of significant property taxes sooner than would otherwise occur if the application were not granted. 3, the applicant's voluntary offer of placing 2 additional units, one bedroom and an additional 2-bedroom, as below market rate units, and also based upon the other conditions that are set forth that I'm going to read shortly. And therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby grants the applicant's request to waive the requirement of City Code Section 223, 14B, to allow the building inspector to issue the certificate of occupancy, notwithstanding that the non-residential component has not been constructed. We then, on pages 4 and 5, set forth 7 conditions that the resolution is being granted upon. And I'll summarize them and try not to read them verbatim, but some of them need to be read completely. 1, that the applicant submit a letter to the building department within 10 days identifying the 1 additional 1-bedroom unit and the 1 additional 2-bedroom unit the applicant has offered to be designated as below market rates. And this resolution memorializes that will be a total of 4 1-bedrooms and 4 2-bedroom units that will be below below market rate housing, for a total of 8 units that are being contributed to this project. Also in paragraph 2, we set forth certain conditions for the promotion of the marketing of the BMR units, having the applicant being required to work with Hudson River Housing, which is the agency the city has selected, to market the BMR units to your employees, to the school district employees, to the volunteers, and to the other categories who qualify under the city's program. So rather, what I think is a robust requirement that they work with HRH for provide to Hudson River Housing the applicant's rental parameters, a flyer or other advertising material containing representative pictures of the units, description including square footage, project amenities, and other information to assist in the marketing of the units. They provide HRH with a draft letter that they would send to the school district, to city employees, to the volunteer fire department and ambulance corps. That they provide dates and times upon which the applicant and HRH will have an open house exclusively for the BMR units, so that, again, your eligible applicants will have the opportunity to visit the site and see the units that are available. Also, that they provide to HRH a marketing plan detailing marketing efforts to advertise the BMR units, which will be coordinated with HRH, because HRH also does its own marketing of the BMR units. So we want the applicant to do more, but we want them to coordinate it with HRH. Within 45 days, appear with HRH at a community segment portion of a city council meeting to explain the BMR application process and the units that are available for rental at the site, and also provide a letter, issue a letter to HRH confirming that any application submitted by HRH for a rental of a BMR unit will be prioritized and processed in advance of any other units, and also provide weekly updates to HRH as to the processing of those applications. So paragraph 2, those conditions are all in there to advance the marketing of the BMR units. And the applicant has reviewed these and has agreed to them. We've also reviewed them with HRH, who is comfortable with them, that they can work with these, implement them, and have that discussion with the applicant. Item 3 is that the applicant shall continue to market with due diligence and in good faith the non-residential component of the project, and provide written status updates by January 31st and March 31st to the city that will be provided to the city council members, and attend a city council meeting in May or at a later time as requested by the city administrator to provide a status update as to the marketing of the non-residential component. And then we have some information details that they need to
Just
provide.
finish that statement. Just finish that paragraph.
Yep. Prior to the status report shall identify efforts undertaken during the time period to market the unit, including how many individuals expressed interest, proposed occupancy, and the reasons why such tenancy was not pursued. So in that paragraph, condition 3, we want to hold their feet to the fire to the non-residential component. They need to provide written status updates, detail what those efforts were. You heard from the commercial real estate broker previously as to some of those efforts, and this just requires them to document that. And I thought adding language about not only what are you doing, but what have you heard? That's important as well, so you can react to that feedback. Number 4 was prior to the certificate of occupancy being issued, that they maintain the erosion and sediment control measures for Building 100, and also fencing around the project site. That was discussed with the building inspector, Bruce Flower, just to make sure that since that non-residential component has the foundation poured but not the shell of the building, and there will be residents moving in, we want to make sure that there is obviously safe occupancy, and those conditions are maintained. There's a punch list item, so you're granting this, but you don't want the building inspector to be required to issue the certificate of occupancy because he still has his own items of work, a punch list, standard punch list whenever there's a project. Before the building inspector issues the certificate of occupancy, he goes through the approved plans, makes sure that everything that was required by the planning board and required by the New York State Building Code has been implemented. or a list was provided. The applicant, I believe, understands and agrees to those and is working with their staff in the building department to complete that. Bruce has had conversations with them. Prior to the issuance of the CO, the applicant shall establish to the satisfaction of the building inspector that it has complied with the approved site plan with respect to buildings 200 and 300 and those areas leading up to and related to buildings 200 and 300. This condition was requested by Bruce just to make clear that the demarcation between what improvement service 100 versus what service building 200 and 300 is not always clear, so he wants to have that discretion that if he thinks a segment of sidewalk needs to be included, but someone argues it's appropriate for building 100, he's got the authority to say that it's, in my opinion, associated with the residential. And that's more of a site improvements, the landscaping, the sidewalks, and the parking areas. And then, item 7, within 14 days of the adoption of this resolution, the applicant shall provide a letter detailing all work required by the approved site plan associated with building 100, which is not being completed and which is being held in abeyance while it markets building 100. Bruce again felt it would be helpful just to have a clear understanding as to not only what is being done, but what has not been done, and so that's clear. And then the last resolved paragraph is sort of forward-thinking. We've heard an initial amendment for the concept plan to convert the non-residential building to residential. The council was clear. It wants the applicant to proceed in good faith and due diligence with marketing the non-residential. But you're also in this resolution reserving the right that if by June 1st, 2005, they haven't marketed building 100, they don't have a tenant, and they haven't come to you with an application to request, as is their right under the existing code, to vary that you would then, they would then be required to build out building 100, as previously required by the approved site plan, as required by Dave Buckley's August 25th, 2021 letter, and as required by Bruce Flower.
And I just want to say, it says June 1st, 2024 in my packet.
Yes,
I think
and that's
that's
being
because of the
corrected.
track changes thing.
Yes.
It's intended to be 2025.
It is, yes, thank you. I've noted it on my hard copy here.
In the section 3, could we put 2025 for January 31st, 2025 and March 31st, 2025, just to make that clear?
Yes.
Since we've just talked about 10 years worth of
And
time.
May 2025 for the council meeting too, I would.
Yep,
Yeah.
all 3 spots in paragraph 3.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I would say too, I think for the first items here, the submission of the letter to the building department and the packet of information to Hudson River Housing, I want to be clear that the applicant understands that that is not 10 business days, it is 10 days. And it is 21 days, not 21 business days.
Yep, these are all calendar days, and I'll insert that.
Yep, I'm just stating that for public. I do think, actually, I demand that the council be included or aware of that submission, because if that happens on day 11, I certainly want to know that.
Did we define below market rate? Like, could that be a dollar below market rate, or?
No, so this is consistent with the city code provision for
Okay.
below market rate housing.
Okay.
No, there was an email that came in and was asking about, is it their choice of requiring a certain credit score? That they're saying some people aren't qualified because it's 700 or over. I'm not using this property as that example. But is that a regular thing where it's kind of, they're looking at below market rate, but yet they can never match that credit score?
So each landlord under the BMR program does have the abilities to have their own separate requirements that from what Hudson River Housing has told me, there's one set of requirements that they apply to all their tenants, and the BMR units need to satisfy that as well, whether it's 2 references, 3 references, whatever the credit rating is. But if they require something that is too high, they can't then rent the BMR unit to a fair market tenant. It just remains vacant. So you'll have an opportunity when they come to the community segment to ask them the questions as to what their criteria is. And also Hudson River Housing will be present at that, so Hudson River Housing can answer your questions as to whether that's an impediment, whether it's fair, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether it's something we need to look at. I don't know that answer, but they
Right.
do have that ability to have their criterias, because the BMR only speaks about the eligibility in terms of affordability, not in terms of the other standard landlord-tenant requirements.
Okay, but the way you described it, the landlord, if the criteria that they impose are too high, their rent that they receive is zero.
Right.
And if their criteria is more reasonable, they get a BMR rent.
Yes, the more reasonable, I presume they would get a greater pool of applicants.
Yeah, okay.
So, right, but it's in their interest to make sure it's reasonable and achievable.
Any other questions, folks?
Yes, I have a handful. As we last talked about this at our November 5th meeting, there was a discussion of if there was a violation issued in our code, it's $1,000 a day. Can you talk a little about the history of this project in relation to any violations?
So under the city code, and Beacon is no different, the first step is you need to issue what's called a notice of violation, give someone the opportunity to cure it, and then a summons would be issued. The building inspector determines how long a period they have to cure things, unless it's a violation of the New York State Code, and there's a state regulation saying forth how many days. In this case, the building inspector has not issued any violations. The prior building inspector determined that it had to be built concurrently, and the trigger there, as being interpreted by Bruce and by Dave Buckley at the time, was that as long as it was built before they applied for this residential CO, they were in conformance with the site plan approval and with the code. They came to this council seeking a waiver of that, so Bruce has been waiting for that. If this resolution were not passed, Bruce would then have to seek enforcement and tell the applicant, you got to come in for your framing permit and frame out the building in accordance with the August 21st letter. So there's not been any violation issued, and those are the triggers that would do it. As far as the dollar amount, that's what your code requires. The judge has discretion. The dollar amounts would not be retroactive. The dollar amounts would be from when the notice of violation is issued and if not complied with. And then the judge would ultimately determine what is the exact amount of the fine.
Sorry, just to clarify kind of my understanding, it's not as if, like, a retroactive notice of violation could be applied to 2021 or something for whenever this person decided that they weren't paying attention to the zoning code. The notice of violation would be served at some future, could potentially be served at some future date. So it's not as if there is something sitting on the table where there's 3 years' worth of fines that have been backlogged that we're saying we don't care about. There is no notice of violation at this point. The notice of violation would not be backdated to whatever point in time. It would only be something that could potentially happen at a future date. Is that accurate?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
And then just to clarify, the $1,000 is the maximum amount per day that the court could assess.
Correct.
But the court decides in its own judgment what number is involved.
That is correct.
If we go to court.
Right, after hearing from the applicant and after hearing from ourselves and using whatever discretion the court wishes to exercise.
As a follow-up about enforcement, so I get that, like, there's a part in there about, if June 1st, 2025, they don't ask for relief, but yet they haven't built the non-residential component, we have the option of violation. What about things in this resolution, like the 21 days to issue something? Is there any enforcement that goes along with that? Is if they don't do something by January 6th, is there any follow-up that we have, any recourse legally in that case?
There is, and so let's take the most potentially egregious one is that they haven't applied by June 1st, or they've applied and you've denied it, and they then don't go and build out the building 100. This would be a zoning violation because it's being issued pursuant to the amended site plan, pursuant to your zoning code. Your building inspector would issue a notice of violation, and then if it failed to do so, they would be subject to the fines and enforcement in city court.
Is there any additional or parallel enforcement of our resolution if we passed this? That's the kind of question.
But the resolution would be enforced because it's being issued pursuant to the zoning code as a separate violation under the resolution.
So it's almost because we have this law saying you have to get relief from us, we kind of become almost part of a site plan condition or approval?
Correct. I would consider it akin to a planning board site plan approval resolution, yes.
And so again, apart from the most egregious one, we talked about you have to submit something to the building department within 10 days. Let's say that doesn't happen until January 1st. Can we issue a notice of violation?
Yes.
Okay.
In the past related to this project, and I really appreciate you, Nick, first of all, just detailing both the long history of this and also why we as the city feel it's worth discussing this kind of as a potential way forward for the benefit of the city in general. And I'm interested in, one of the things that's come up in the long history of this project was some questions about the HVAC units that are currently on top of the building. I went by and looked at the site yesterday and saw a bit of where it is now. And I'm curious if the punch list items that you mentioned, does that include anything about the HVAC units that you're aware of?
It does, yes. So that is a specific item in Bruce Flowers' punch list item. It's requiring some screening that's being proposed by the applicant. Bruce is working out details with them to have assurances that what they've proposed as screening meets New York State code because it's up on the roof. It needs to be resistance to wind and not be a danger itself. So Bruce is waiting for details on that, but it was raised as a punch list item and needs to be addressed to Bruce's satisfaction before the CO would be issued.
Great.
Just want to go back to Amber's question. Oh.
No, go ahead.
So Amber asked a question, is if they're in violation, can we submit, or can we do a notice of violation? But I guess the question is more, looking at the last 3 years, is will we, Because we could have done one in 2021, but for some reason the city didn't, and they were clearly in violation of the law for 3 years, and everybody driving past it that's a city employee then knows the code, could have done something about it, and nobody did. So I guess my question is, if we got to a situation where, they're in violation of the law that we pass, will we do anything about it? And I feel like we should put into the law that the building department must take action and must submit letters of violation where they exist.
So the building inspector is the one who determines enforcement and has discretion. What you can ask for is reports as to the compliance with the resolution, which we would do, and quite frankly, I'll provide that to this council to make sure of its compliance. But we can't compel the building inspector to issue an enforcement. They have discretion under state law, and they have to exercise that discretion.
Yeah, but my understanding was they found that there was not a violation. It wasn't that they found there was one and didn't act.
Correct. Yeah, Dave Buckley issued his opinion that, correct, yes.
Okay.
You did mention this, and I want to double down on it because there's been some discussion even amongst us about our concern about setting a precedent. And so you said this doesn't set a precedent in terms of other future developers cannot guarantee this is a path that will work for them. The precedent that's been setting is now this is in the law. This is something that another developer could come to us in the future, knowing that we have discussed it with this development.
Right. So I added this language because even if we say it's not a precedent, whenever there's a similar situation, someone's going to say, oh, this is precedent. So I wanted it clear for the future councils that this council looked at this and determined it was a unique set of facts, and that future applicants should be forewarned that they need to take action perhaps sooner, they need to engage in a dialogue sooner, and that if a similar set of circumstances were to present itself, you wouldn't view it the same. And I think it's helpful having that language in there because these resolutions are available, and this is a detailed one with some history to it that I think distinguishes itself from future ones.
Great. I have a question for the applicant, actually. So I know when you were last here, November 25th, there was discussion of could we do the temporary below market rate units. I know that's not in the resolution, so I'm just wondering if you could give voice about why and your sort of thoughts behind that. I think that the public would appreciate that, along with us.
Sure. Jay Blumenfeld, High Developers. So I think the mayor previously touched on the fact of how much these BMR units cost the development, and just a little bit about the cost of building per unit, what you get in revenue. And I would say that if we're being generous about it, I think that you break even from a BMR unit when you build a building these days and you look at interest costs, taxes, operating costs, insurance, so on. And I think that in reality, a lot of these developments actually lose money per BMR unit. Adding 2 BMR units is right where we were. That brings us right to the point of having the loan. Brings us right to the point of having issues with covering the debt service on the loan. there's a debt service coverage ratio that's needed, which basically means that you have to bring in enough revenue to cover a percentage of what your debt service, what your mortgage costs a year. So we currently have a construction loan on the property. That construction loan hopefully will be converted to a standard permanent mortgage without issue. When we looked at the numbers and we were trying to calculate how much will we get in revenue with adding another 2 units, that brought us right to the precipice of where we needed to be in compliance with what the bank requires to be at that debt service coverage ratio. So that's in short how we got to the 2 units. Adding another 2 units, even if it's for 5 years, puts that debt in jeopardy the way that we looked at it, and we conferred with the bank. They were in agreement on that assessment. So this is just, we'd like to do what we can to, give whatever we can. We understand that we were wrong here, and I just want to publicly state we apologize. I think we've learned a lot of lessons here that we're going to take to heart, and all of the deadlines that have been brought up are going to try to do better than the mandated deadlines. We'll copy whoever we need to copy, and that was our train of thought and our calculation.
Great. Thank you.
On that third paragraph in the be it further resolved section, the reason I had you read that further out was just for clarification. There's a couple of concerns I have with that paragraph, and I thank you for the diligence of reaching out, and I'm sorry I didn't catch it till today, but the tone of the paragraph presupposes that a failure to find in the way it could be read. I know there's another interpretation, but my concern is that it presupposes that they're not going to be successful finding a commercial tenant. And I maintain strong interest in there being some uses for there being resources on site, so that these are not all residential where people have to go elsewhere for all needs. We're going to be talking about transit-oriented development for other purposes, and I think this is an opportunity that I don't want to see bypassed, and I don't want it short shrift in terms of how this is worded, so that there's an assumption within there. Secondly, there's the request that they come and give a report, status updates, but we have just making it clear, just as a statement with no resolution, but there's no transparency into the information that they'll share with us. There's no insight, so we'll have to take them at their word about what they've shared with us. And just want to acknowledge that I recognize that and sharing that with the rest of the council.
If I may just, on that note, there is a certain amount, I understand your point, there's a certain amount that the broker, I think, is able to provide that's just data given to him by the software he uses. So if it's anything, there is...
That's great. We'll welcome that information then.
Yeah. What's that?
We'll welcome that information then. That's great.
We'll make sure we include that.
Yeah, I think I would just say in terms of like what I'm looking for, and I've said this in the past, the burden of proof is on you. So like, don't come in here and just say, oh, we tried and it didn't go so great. Like, tell us how you tried. What did you do? What were the results? The numbers behind it? Like, report it out in a way that it's evident that there is work happening and it's not just like, oh, we put it on Instagram and like nobody wanted it.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, so having you share with us would be great, and then also with our own building department, if we could add another, be it further resolved, that the city attorney and building inspector shall provide updates to the council as each milestone is achieved. We'll also make sure that that's clear for us and the public. So I appreciate this is an important project. I also agree with Jeff, having gone by the site. I think I see that you're making efforts to clean it up. It looks a lot different than it did even a month ago, and also saw how close the rail is right there, right along your property, and the idea that we're hoping to move forward with that as a city. That's not on you, that's on us and the county to do that. And yet, if it did happen, how that would transform the potential, especially of the non-residential part of that property. So that's something, as we think of the future of the city, I'm keeping in mind, realizing that come 6 months from now, we still might not know. So whatever you decide to do in 6 months, however that works out with your current plan, obviously you want to make money off of it as soon as possible. That is your business. But as from a city perspective, that is something that is top of mind for me as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that from our perspective, we need that third building to make any money on the property. When I'm talking about what we could do with the first 2 buildings, that's essentially to stabilize the property and the development as a whole. To actually have us as the developer make $1, I strongly believe we need that third building to produce something. We're okay waiting a little bit if we could stabilize it, But if we do get a commercial tenant of any type that's viable, you have my word that we will pursue that to the very end. We need, I think, as Brian said before, and I think very highly of Brian Massey as a broker, and he's working with other brokers as well. It's not just him, but he's making sure it's listed. We have a paid listing that's always shows up as high as possible when you Google it. So we will make every effort as required, and I will try to make sure that we exceed the requirements of those reports as requested.
I have a question. Is this the only property that you own?
No.
No, okay. So why can't the revenue from the other properties be used to build the commercial building?
So
I mean, we're talking about this one building, but, I mean, from what I understand, you own multiple properties, but we're only talking about the financing around this one project, but you could use money that you make from other projects to pay for the commercial.
Just from a fiduciary responsibility, I don't believe that we could make, every project that we build, there are projects that we build, let's say, a few that are kind of interconnected, stages, phases. This project alone, 248 Tyranda, the 9-acre site, is its own project. It has its own financial outlook and picture.
But that was a choice you made.
That was a choice that was made before we started, and involved banks and involved an investor.
Okay.
I assume you have a unique LLC for this property?
Yes.
Which was also your choice.
Yes.
I don't think people choose to lose money on a project.
There you go.
So, separately from this, next year, I do want to consider this particular requirement in the Fishkill Creek zoning. I am getting a little concerned that we may be over wanting commercial, and I'm just getting concerned that we put our Main Street at risk if we put too much property that requires commercial development. We're looking at doing that on Fishkill Avenue, we're looking at doing that at the train station to some degree, and we're looking at doing that along Fishkill Creek. Given the circumstances of real estate in commercial office in particular, and then also some retail, I have concerns, and while it's not relevant to this discussion, I am going to want to raise it next year because I do think we're at risk.
And I think just based on our discussion, I would ask that we amend, and I'll make a motion to amend, that the city attorney and building inspector will provide updates to the council as each milestone occurs.
I will second that.
Thank you.
Amendment.
So my only question there is, do we want every milestone, or if a milestone is missed?
I'm fine with knowing that I actually would like to know that they occurred.
Okay.
Just based on the history here.
Okay. Yep, understood.
Did this require a public hearing, Nick?
It did not.
No, okay. So if we're making substantial changes, it's not an issue?
It's not, no. It would just need a vote on the amendment.
Yeah. So any comments on the amendment? Hearing none. All in favor of the amendment to request regular reports on individual milestones for this, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Shall we bring it to a vote? So all in favor of adopting this resolution, granting good cause for 248 Holdings, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, so I read motion carries 5-2. And I think we're good. I think that's it on this one. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
too.
The last item is I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the minutes of December 2nd.
Motion?
Second.
So that was Molly and Amber. All in favor say aye.
Wait, I have a couple of edits.
Oh, I ask every time I get nothing.
Which I thought was thrown in maybe just for me.
Okay,
Maybe
so,
it's,
of
maybe
course,
it's
I'm
my
so sorry.
gift.
Any additions, corrections, amendments, edits?
I believe at the top where it lists who attended, that Dan does not get a first name. He's just council member, whereas all the rest of us gets
yeah.
first names.
He was half out.
Exactly. That was our way of being like, he's there.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, and then right at the end of the adjournment, like usually the motion's on the line with it, how it passes, and it's just over a line. I don't know if that matters, but I just thought I'd mention it because I like mentioning things like that. So that was it.
Okay. With those minor changes in mind, all in favor of approving the minutes of December 2nd, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. And then here we are at our second opportunity for public comment. If you have not made a comment at the first one, would like to do so now, this is your opportunity. I don't see anyone in the physical audience. Ben, anyone online? Oh, he's fallen asleep. He's committed harikiri.
He's furiously making the minute amendments.
Yeah.
I will take that as a
There-
no.
You have no hands online.
Yeah, that's what I.
Not on mine.
All right, thank you. So.
He's been
given-
having issues with his microphone, too, so.
Oh.
Yeah, I know that. So I just want to announce the next meeting. The next meeting will be January 6th, is that right? So on Monday, January 6th, it will be a combination workshop and council meeting, beginning at 7 with the notice of the full meeting at 7:30, or are we not going to specify that?
I think it's starting at 7 with the other meeting to follow immediately thereafter.
Okay, with the regular meeting to follow immediately thereafter. So that's the announcement. Okay. I could do it on the 1st, too.
Sorry, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
I was just sorry, I should have spoken into the mic. I was just mentioning to the mayor that Pam and I need to be sworn in for the term.
yeah.
And I wasn't sure if he wanted to do that, like, right before, it has to be right before the workshop, I guess.
It can be any time starting on the 1st.
Okay.
Oh,
We'll
that's
figure it
right,
out.
and we won't swear in another person, the Ward 4 representative
until
until.
the meeting.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. So the meeting time is still fine,
Yes, I
even
think
if we
it is.
did it on the 6th?
And then each of you let me know when you want to do that. right?
Okay.
Okay. So that's announcement for the meeting. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Oh,
So,
Second.
Dan and
I think Dan
Pam.
gets the last word. He gets the second.
Probably do roll call.
All in favor of Dan and Pam's motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you all, and have a good evening and good holidays.
Thank you, Ben.
We'll see you in the new year.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Okay.
Do you, this,
the only thing we have to